Volume 2, Chapter 1, Water, the 19th of January, 2022. This is water, said David Foster Wallace, an influential figure who promoted self-awareness and self-education through the use of dialectical means of storytelling. Preached the water allegory. Fish do not know that the medium in which they were born to swim in was called water by us mere humans. It was previously stated that language is a powerful means of expression. But do fish recognize language? What is language? Authenticity is a function of an individual's confrontation with his or her own death. The plague or the virus is one of several existential threats or crises that we are facing, and the intersection of those that is so disturbing. Professor said, climate change is for me the most disturbing fact of our time as well as political paralysis. Professor said, I always thought philosophy had to do with nothing. It is what is not. Professor said, you think that truth is abstract? One of the fundamental questions is what do we mean by truth? Professor asked. Newton wrote more theological treatises than he did scientific treatises. Professor said, every person has their own understanding of a movie, a scene, or a book. By many means, we are the ideas and concepts we digest, the theories we cling to, and the mere thoughts we carry with us to a discussion or to a receiving audience. While discussing Don't Look Up, the movie, some individuals saw the deterministic idea of the movie itself. Earth will be destroyed. They then triangulated the many references and reactions to that movie-driven fact. If Earth is going to be destroyed by a comet that cannot be stopped, what is the future of the human race? Of course, since this is a movie and not real life or history, here we are. Earth is still intact. The audience viewed the movie from its backstory and what happened throughout the plot. Those we call materialistic people are portrayed in the movie as people who want to harvest the comet itself, reach out to space and destroy the comet, not to save Earth, but to put their hands on the minerals it contains in order to manufacture more electronics, to put in the iPhones and laptops we are using. While this seems like a valid enough reason for some of us to draw their attention to this massive cluster of metal coming towards Earth, but is it the main point? NASA's mission, vision, and objective in life is to bring us news about space exploration, to educate humanity about life outside Earth. But then again, you have those agencies which have spent an incredible amount of money on consecutive trips to Mars, with the hope of possibly establishing a colony on a faraway planet that looks to be inhabitable by futile humans. Why? It is remarkable that a new movie has hit high standing in a short time span. But here is the thing, there is a game that tackles the same idea. A comet is on its way to hit Earth. The game is called Final Fantasy VII. However, let us stay professional. You cannot speak about video games in a class about religion, they said. Can we only speak about movies then? I asked. Only if your instructor thought it was useful, they said. What do you call a person who cannot speak? Mute. What do you call a person who does not want to speak? On mute. With language being a topic in our daily lives, it is only fascinating how these terms are interrelated. In a similar manner, I have started a study of religion through the lens of philosophy. The course itself was called Philosophy of Religion. But how is philosophy even able to explain religion if philosophy itself stems from the study of what is not rather than what is? We are told that some terms are new. We will encounter a lot of ambiguous terms used by this class's philosophers that will require some sort of explanation, some of which were mentioned by Professor in the form of questions. What is religion? He asked. It is a way of relating to oneself and other people in the world through some kind of God or divinity, in a way that premates the way you think about things and approach daily life. A student replied. What about Buddhism? They believe in no God. Professor asked. It is hard to define, one of them said. It is some sort of operating system that we filter reality through. So it is similar to the idea of God's creation or how we perceive our way around reality. Another student replied. What is theology? Professor asked. It is the study of what religion is and where it stems from and how it operates. A student replied. It is only the study of what religion is, because that can be sociology and that can be anthropology, Professor replied. One needs to take as an assumption certain logic behind a kind of belief system, and theology has to figure out how these pieces operate once the assumption has been made, a student said. In a certain way, yes, but the suffix ology comes from the word logos, which means the logic of, Professor said. Now comes the language. What does theology mean? If the suffix ology comes from the word the logic of, then it means the logic of theo. This prefix itself is a complicated one. It is more understood by the general public that theo refers to God, so theology rather means the logic of God. On that note, the study of theology means the study of the logic of God. However, the word in the dictionary reads the study of the nature of God. Let me put this forth before diving any deeper into the topic. The nature of God is never to be understood by human comprehension because humans require a frame of reference by which to compare and contrast. But the nature of things was not spontaneously put forth. While some believe that we just happened or that humans were just a result of an inexplicable evolution that is natural in human standards, this defies the whole theological concept of reason, let alone logic, of existence. Theology could be understood, I hope, as the following. I was rewatching our lecture just now and wanted to share how I understand theology, hopefully getting my idea across through the following. Two people were walking down a calm summer day at 10 a.m. to get some groceries. They stood and waited for the traffic lights to turn green in order to cross the street. An elderly woman was waiting right next to them. When the light turned green, they all started walking. Traffic lights are a tricky topic. By the time these two arrived onto the other side of the road, the lights turned red. A car was speeding through on the far left side of the road when the driver's phone rang and they had to reach down to pick it up. Taking a quick look at their lights, they concluded that they had a rite of passage at that moment. So they picked up the phone and answered it. The elderly lady, however, has not yet reached the safe end of the road. In fact, her walking aid got stuck in the big holes of a sewer drain right in the middle of the street. What is more, she couldn't shout for help and couldn't hear the car coming because she was born deaf. Theology for me refers to the multitude of ways this scenario could have been avoided. One of the two people could have realized midway through that the elderly woman needs help crossing the street, or simply that she needs help. Or they could have stopped gossiping about Jane and took one look back at the elderly woman with a walking stick trying to cross the street. At the end of the day, it is not about you being safe and happy or crossing the street and going on your merry way. It's about being aware of your surroundings all the time and helping others. The old lady does not die, however, because the driver realizes at the last minute that there is someone in the middle of the street. They take immediate action and steer the wheel quickly to the right. Unfortunately, again, one of the two people is hit before the car crashes into the near pole. Some call this karma, for had the person helped the lady, he wouldn't be taken into the ER. Again, theology, as the study of the logic of God, is the logic upon which everything was put forth in the world, and the logic based on which everything in the world happens. Some say it is but a collection of if statements. If the earth was flat, if we could live on Mars, if she dies, if he becomes rich, if I read a book. And the most auspicious of all, while no one understands the nature of life itself, many people ask if God exists. Well, he does. Language tells you many things without actually saying it. When you say, if God exists, you're simply affirming that he exists. Whereas if you say existed instead, you are denying that fact. This is what I was taught growing up. Taking all of that into account, in addition to the multiple possibilities that led us here, theology, to some, is the study of the existence of God. But for me, it is trying to understand why we are still alive when millions have already died in conflicts, cleansings, genocides, plagues, and pandemics. There has to be a reason, right? A reason that does not entirely relate to the philosophy part of this class, but to the religion side of it. Ideas have consequences, that is why we study, the professor said. Philosophy is its time comprehended in thought, Hegel said. I do not think that religion is simply what goes on in temples, churches, cathedrals, or mosques. I think there is a religious dimension to all cultures, the professor said. Protestant tradition is enormously influential in shaping modernity. There's a distinction between what is called analytic philosophy and what's called continental philosophy. There's a huge gap between them, and that distinction goes back to the Middle Ages. Departments of philosophy are either analytic or continental. I'm much more interested in continental philosophy. I think life is too short to be preoccupied with trivialities of analytic philosophy, the professor said. What is the difference between analytic philosophy and continental philosophy? On the continental side, the people who have been most influential have either been Luther or people influenced by Luther. There are two primary strands of Protestantism, Lutheranism and Calvinism, where Calvin codified a certain kind of theological vision that has shaped modern capitalism. Part of the argument I want to make this semester is that anthropocentrism that begins with Luther and Descartes in different ways is at the heart of Anthropocene, that is destroying the planet, the professor said. I tell you the truth right now, I do not understand most of these concepts or these terms. I do not know what Lutheranism, Calvinism, Reformation, or even Protestantism resembles. I do not know the difference between what Calvin wanted or what Luther preached for. It was not something that I thought was necessary or even remotely relevant to my own life. There are certain concepts that are required in order to pass an exam proposed by the university itself, following a previously agreed upon syllabus that is put together in order to teach students how to think. as if thinking is something we need to be taught how to do. Isn't everyone born with the ability to do that specific process of cognitive production of ideas? Isn't thinking merely a way in which we triangulate these ideas and formulate an argument? How to think. Do you even need a manual to do that? Is thinking even something you are taught? Isn't it something everyone knows how to do? No, what I'm learning right now is not how to think, it is how to get incepted, I say. The movie Inception, since we are allowed to speak about movies, is a translation of here is how to think. Let me tell you something now. There was a frog. I will not tell you what its color is, but you will immediately think that the frog is green, because that is your preconception of most frogs' colors. Now you tell me, what is the frog doing here? Why is the frog a significant part of this chapter? Is it because the chapter is called Water? Is it because a frog is all you are thinking about when you read There Was a Frog? Is the frog a capitalist, a Lutheran, a Calvinist, an aristocrat, or a colonist? If the frog becomes a carnivore to other species of animals, and instead of jumping on a single lily pad in an isolated swamp, it begins eating giant insects and mammals in a nearby jungle. Instead of being an insignificant insect munching animal, it becomes a threat to human life. How many doctors will faint of fear when dissecting frogs? How to think is an attempt to make you choose where to begin the thought process. You can choose to begin your train of thought from the frog, the water, the fish, or even the interstellar galactic mysteries that NASA is trying so desperately to explore. Or you can choose to follow another equivalent capable human being's instruction in order to get where they are. If you choose the frog, however, there are many more life driven examples you can look into. If you choose the instructors, you will learn. Don't shun the possibility, but there are only a handful of books that will teach you the way to think, and only the way to think like the writer, not like you. Glorify another? I shrug. Learn from another. Or sneer at them. Or shudder at their lack of knowledge. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Dory famously sang, and breathe underwater.